Rock types are known for their high defense, low speed, and common weaknesses. In the Kanto region especially, grass and water type Pokemon can be found all throughout the gameplay, meaning that a monotype rock user is going to have a tough time playing these games. In this challenge, I'm going to try to beat Pokemon Red, but my team will be based on Pewter City's gym leader Brock. Brock, getting bored of the weak trainers visiting his gym, decided to test his limits and take on the League Challenge. And I'm here to tell you his story. We first need to design the team that Brock will be using in this playthrough. Since we're playing through Pokemon Red, we are restricted to the first 151 Pokemon, of which there are only 6 fully evolved rock types: Golem, Onix, Rhydon, Omastar, Kabutops, and Aerodactyl. That means the obvious choice is to use all 6 by the end of the run, but I also want to show my justification for these choices. If we look at Brock's rematch team from Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, we see that he actually uses 5 of these 6 Pokemon, so we know that at some time or another he would be able to obtain them. The only Pokemon he doesn't seem to fight with is Rhydon. I can't find any instances in the main series games where Brock uses a Rhydon. However, in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, he does use a Rhyhorn. And then if we look at his team in the Type Expert Tournament in Black and White 2, we see that he uses a Rhyperior. It can be reasonably assumed then that at some point Brock has owned at least one Rhydon, so we're allowed to use one in this playthrough. Also, I won't be starting this challenge with all 6 Pokemon on my team, but instead I will be building up the team gradually as one might do in a normal Kanto run. I'm also not going to be using any kind of items in battle, that way it's a bit harder on myself. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the game. We start off by introducing ourselves to Professor Oak. I went with the name Brock for this run for obvious reasons. I then had to give a name to the rival, and since I'm totally unoriginal, I just went for the classic Gary. We try to skip town, but since it's illegal to walk between towns without having a Pokemon, Oak stops us and drags us back to his lab. Inside, Gary is waiting impatiently, and Oak gives us both a Pokemon. I picked Charmander so Gary will have Squirtle. This will make the game much more difficult later. We nicknamed the Charmander Release since Brock doesn't want to be seen with any nasty fire types. Gary takes his Squirtle and we head to Viridian City to buy our first Pokeballs. We fool around on Route 1 for a while and wait for the rock types to come to us, and we end up running into a diseased Ammonite. Luckily, Brock knows just the cure, so we catch it and nurse it back to health. Its stats are pretty decent, so we decide to take it on as our true starter. Next chance we get, we're immediately releasing that Charmander. We also run into a Kabuto here suffering with the same condition, so we take the time to catch and heal it as well. Ammonite and Kabuto are very weak right now, so we need to grind against some of the Pokemon on Route 1 before we take on our rival on Route 22. Let's go ahead and try to end this battle quickly. He sends in a Pidgey and I go in for Kabuto. Kabuto goes for Scratch while Pidgey goes for Gust. Sand Attack lowers our accuracy, but we're still able to get off another Scratch. Pidgey retaliates with Gust, and we actually end up missing a Scratch because of our lowered accuracy. I decide to give Scratch one more attempt, while Pidgey hits us with a critical hit Gust, and we end up missing yet again. I then switch into Ammonite. Pidgey hits us with 2 weak Gusts before we slam it with a Water Gun. 1 Water Gun later and Pidgey is down. He sends in Squirtle and I switch back out to Kabuto. We take a lot of damage from Squirtle's bubble attacks, only dealing a little bit ourselves with Scratch. Squirtle's defense is really high. I switch into Ammonite to preserve Kabuto's life so we both gain experience. Ammonite takes several hits as we continuously chip away at the Squirtle with Water Gun. This battle was really frustrating, not because it was particularly difficult, but because it took so long to drain the Squirtle's HP. His Squirtle faints, and he tells us that we just got lucky. At least now we're able to move on to the next city where we can face our first gym leader challenge. At this point, I need to discuss something inherently flawed about Ammonite and Kabuto in this generation. You might have noticed that they haven't actually been learning any moves as we've been leveling them up. If we take a look at their move pools, we see they don't learn any new moves until level 34, so we're going to be stuck with Water Gun and Scratch for a pretty long time. My gripes about moves aside, it's time we finally take on the Pewter City Gym Leader. Turns out that the Gym Leader is actually an imposter pretending to be me. How dare he? Doesn't he know there's only room for one Rock-type Master in Kanto? Imposter Brock sends in Geodude, and I respond by sending in Omnite. That Geodude didn't have a chance. Next he decides to send in Onix, who gets a quick tackle in before going down to another one of our water guns. A critical hit nonetheless. And just like that, the battle's over, and the poser gives us the Boulder Badge. As we're making our way to Cerulean City, we have to pass through Mount Moon. We run into a wild Geodude here and add it to the team, making 3 of the 6 total members we're going to have by the end of the run. I pick up the Dome Fossil and head immediately to Misty's gym. This is one of the 2 gym leader fights that I'm most concerned for in this game, the other being Erika, but we'll get back to her later. She leaves with her Staryu, and I send out Kabuto. She uses an X defend while I go for a Scratch. Her water guns do a little less than 1/3 of her HP each, so we're only able to stay in for 4 turns before going down. I decided to switch into Geodude, and her Staryu immediately goes for a water gun, taking us out in 1 hit. I was forced to switch into Ammonite, who's able to take Staryu's water guns much better than what Kabuto could because of its higher special stat. A critical hit water gun takes down the Staryu. She sends in her Starmie and immediately goes for Bubble Beam, taking us down to 14 HP. We retaliate with a water gun before going down to a water gun of her own. I take a break from fighting Misty to visit Bill. We help him out and get the SS ticket. Since we gained a few levels going to see Bill, I decided we should take on Misty again just to see if we can overpower her. Thanks to a critical hit, Kabuto can take down Staryu in 3 hits, but takes a lot of damage itself. I switch into Geodude hoping to make use of our new move Self-Destruct. However, a single Bubble Beam is enough to take Geodude down. I switch into Ammonite, who gets critical hit twice with a Bubble Beam and a Water Gun. Ammonite goes down and I send in Kabuto. Kabuto doesn't last long, and it becomes evident that we need a new strategy for this gym. My immediate thought is that if Geodude can just tank 1 hit from the Starmie, it can self-destruct and do a load of damage. To give a buff to my HP and defenses, I decide to try to evolve Geodude into Graveler. Geodude evolves into Graveler at level 25. However, I won't be evolving my Geodude until level 31, since Geodude learns Earthquake at level 31 while Graveler learns it at 36. Earthquake will be very helpful for the next gym, so I need to get it on Geodude immediately. And so, with my level 31 Graveler, I take on Misty again. I'm going to save you some time here and get straight to the point. We failed big time. Graveler just wasn't strong enough to take a single hit. I don't want to just mindlessly level up Graveler until we can tank a hit, so I decide to look for other methods to beat Starmie. I remember that back in Pewter City, the imposter gave us the TM Bide for defeating him. Bide is a move that can do a sizable amount of damage after you've taken hits over several turns. I teach it to Omnite since it's the most capable of surviving Starmie's attacks. This time, instead of leading with Kabuto, I go for Graveler and use an Earthquake, which actually takes out the Staryu in 1 hit. I keep Graveler in for Starmie, hoping I can get another Earthquake off, but she goes for Bubble Beam as expected. I switch into Ammonite and start using Bide. It seems like her Water Gun is going to be a 5-hit knockout, so we should at least be able to get 1 Bide off. She uses an X defend, which I don't think will affect how our Bide performs, since it does a set amount of damage based on the amount that she does to us. She gets off 2 more water guns before we release our stored energy. This takes Starmie into the deep yellow. I switch into Kabuto and Misty goes for a bubble beam, taking us down to half health. 1 scratch is not enough to kill it. She goes for another bubble beam, which nearly knocks us out, but we're able to hang on and go for a scratch, winning us the Cascade badge. We had finally defeated one of the worst trainers in this run. We take a trip to the SS Anne to crush our rival's hopes and dreams. We also get the HM for cut after creepily rubbing an old man's back. With this HM, we're now able to take on the Vermilion City Gym Leader Lieutenant Surge. You can probably guess how this went with a level 31 Graveler knowing Earthquake, so I'll just show you the highlights. He leads with Voltorb, who manages to get a Sonic Boom out before going down in 1 hit. Next up is his Pikachu, who likewise also goes down in 1 hit. Finally, he sends in his Ace Raichu. Now, as you can guess, this also goes down in a single hit. You know, if it weren't so easy to sweep his whole team with a single ground-type move, I would say that he has some potential. At this point, I decide it's time to get more Pokemon. We run into an Aerodactyl who's suffering a familiar condition that we saw earlier in the run. We catch it, and then we also catch an Onix in the rock tunnel. I then pay a visit to the Rocket hideout in Celadon City. Giovanni is waiting for me inside and challenges me to a battle. He leads with Onix and I choose to go in with Ammonite. We endure a rock throw before he goes down to one of our water guns. Out next is Rhyhorn, who is met with the same fate. His Kangaskhan is the only one we can't take down with a single water gun, so I switch into Graveler to get some massive Earthquake damage. Kangaskhan is a 2-hit knockout with Earthquake, so we take a bit of damage from his 5-hit Comet Punch. Our last Earthquake connects, and down goes the Kangaskhan. Giovanni is defeated, and we pick up the Silph Scope he drops while rushing away in a panic. With that bit of story out of the way, we can move on to the next gym leader, Erika. Most of our team is weak to Erika at this point, so we're going to have to rely heavily on Aerodactyl if we want to win this battle. She sends in her Victory Bell, and naturally we go for Aerodactyl. We manage to get in a quick wing attack before she puts us to sleep with Sleep Powder. We were pretty lucky with that critical hit there. And our luck doesn't stop there, because we immediately wake up next turn. Just 1 more hit and her Victory Bell is done. She sends in Tangela, who we drop to half health with another wing attack before it goes for Bind. In this generation, Bind locks the moves of both Pokemon, so we're stuck taking damage for about 5 turns. When we're freed from the Bind, we hit a wing attack that almost takes the Tangela out. Luckily, instead of going for another Bind, the Tangela just goes for a weak Constrict. She finally sends in her Ace Vileplume. We lead with wing attack, taking it down to about half health, but it goes for a Mega Drain. Aerodactyl gets extremely lucky with a critical hit wing attack, taking down the Vileplume. This battle could have went very differently. We proceed to the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town, where we take down our rival another time and then soothe the spirit of Cubone's mother. We then kick Team Rocket out the top of the tower to save Mr. Fuji. He gives us the Pokeflute, which we use to wake up the Snorlax on the route directly south of Lavender Town. Our next challenge is Koga, who should be quite easy since we have Earthquake on our Graveler and he uses only poison types. His first Coughing falls to a single Earthquake, followed by his Muck and then his second Coughing, before he goes in for his strongest Pokemon, Weezing. Instead of suffering the same fate as his other Pokemon, Weezing instead decides to self-destruct on the first turn. While still in Fuchsia City, I also catch Rhyhorn, who is the last member of our team that we'll need for this run. We then travel back to Saffron City to try to save the Silph Company from Team Rocket. We end up running into our rival in here and having a few tough fights with him because I can't seem to get past his final Blastoise. I edited the first attempt of this battle into a sort of montage that you're seeing now, since it was way too long to include in the full cut of the video. We didn't have problems up until his Alakazam, who managed to take out a few Pokemon before we were able to take it out ourselves. However, the remaining members of our team completely wiped to Blastoise. This battle took me 4 attempts to complete, which I won't bore you with by showing all of them here. I'll just show you the highlights of the end of the last battle. His Alakazam is a challenging foe, but we actually end up taking it down with one of Graveler's Earthquake after we lose Onix. I try to use Self-Destruct on his Blastoise, but before I get the chance he takes me out with a critical hit Water Gun. My Rhyhorn then also falls to one of his bubble attacks. Aerodactyl then goes down as well. After Kabuto faints, the only Pokemon we have left is Ammonite. Luckily, Ammonite still knows Bide, so we're able to unleash our energy to take the Blastoise out in our final turn. We must have still had some of the residual luck from the Erika fight, because the only way this Bide would have worked is if Blastoise hadn't gone for a withdrawal in his final turn. If he hadn't done that, we would have been taken out by one of his Water Guns or Bubble attacks. We then move on to save the President from the clutches of Giovanni. In the Silph Company, Giovanni is a total pushover compared to our rival. His Nidorino can't survive a single Earthquake, and his Kangaskhan goes down in only 2. I switched to Kabuto to take out his Rhyhorn with Surf. We actually end up landing a critical hit here that we didn't really need. His Nidoqueen is a lot more bulky though, so it takes more Surfs to take her down. It's now time to absolutely demolish the remaining gym leaders of Kanto. We're gonna start with Sabrina since we're already here in Saffron City. She leads with Kadabra and I go for Kabuto. Kadabra takes out Kabuto, Aerodactyl takes out Kadabra, Rhyhorn takes out Mr. Mime, Venomoth takes out Aerodactyl, Ammonite takes out Venomoth, and then she sends in her ace Alakazam. From our fight with Gary, we know how terrifying Alakazams can be, so I don't waste any time and I switch into Graveler to go for our strongest move, Self-Destruct. Sabrina is normally one of the hardest gym leaders to fight in a normal Pokemon Red playthrough, so I'm very glad we were able to wrap this gym up with just one attempt. The Marsh Badge was now ours. We then take a trip to Cinnabar Island to face off against the gym leader Blaine. Blaine is a master of fire types, so our entire team has a pretty good advantage over him, especially our Ammonite, Kabuto, and the newly evolved Golem. Ammonite takes out his Growlithe with a few Surfs, and then learns the move Slash, which has a crazy critical hit ratio in this generation, and we're gonna make use of that a lot. His Ponyta falls in 2 turns as well, and then he goes to send in his Rapidash. A single Surf brings Rapidash down to 1/3 of its HP, but then Blaine uses a Super Potion. We go for a second Surf before Rapidash catches us in its Fire Spin attack. He then uses another Super Potion and traps us again in Fire Spin. I absolutely hate moves like Bind, Clamp, and Fire Spin in this generation because you can't attack during them. It's so irritating. I'm glad they changed the mechanic in later generations. We're finally freed from the last Fire Spin and take out Rapidash in 2 more Surfs. He switches into Arcanine and goes for a takedown while we land our own critical hit Surf. Blaine uses his 3rd Super Potion in this battle before we finish him with a final Surf. Kabuto was easily able to sweep his entire team. And now it's time to fight for the 8th gym badge against Rocket Leader Giovanni. He's not much more challenging though than what he was last time, so let's see how this goes. He leads with Rhyhorn, which I immediately take out in a single Water Gun. He sends in Dugtrio, who goes for Dig, so I decide to switch into Aerodactyl to avoid damage. We take it out with a few Wing attacks, and then he switches into Nidoqueen. I bring Ammonite back in and take it out with a few Water Guns. His Nidoking and Rhydon fall to my Water Guns as well. At long last, we had obtained all 8 gym badges and were ready to take on the Pokemon League. However, before we can go through the victory road, we must face our rival one more time. Luckily for us, he's actually easier this time than what he was in Silph Company. Golem takes out his Pidgeot with a Rock Throw, and then learns Explosion in exchange for forgetting Self-Destruct. Gary then sends in Rhyhorn and we switch to Kabutops. Since Rhyhorn is 4 times weak to water, our Surf attack takes it out in 1 turn. He switches to Growlithe, who falls in the same way. When he sends in Execute, I'm forced to switch out to Aerodactyl since it's the only Pokemon I have that can handle grass types. We take out the Execute and he switches into Alakazam. I switch into Omastar, who gets a good bit of damage in before going down to a Psybeam. Rhyhorn also falls to a Psybeam. Thankfully, Kabutops tanks one of the Psybeams and then uses Slash to take it out. Finally, we're up against his Blastoise. I try using Explosion with Golem to take him down, but he hits us with Hydro Pump. It's just too bad we didn't get that lucky 20% chance of him missing. I switch into Kabutops and start going for Slash, overriding his withdraw defense buffs. Thanks to Blastoise's high defense though, we don't damage it much. For some reason, I guess he just didn't feel like attacking Kabutops, and so he goes down in a few more turns. When will he learn to just leave us alone? Now it's time for the real challenge. It's time to go to the Indigo Plateau. Let's get a quick look at my Pokemon. We're pretty underleveled, but I go ahead and look in the item storage and in my bag for TMs that I can teach my Pokemon to give us some more type coverage. I go ahead and try to take on the Elite Four for the first time. This goes about as well as you might expect. We lead with Golem and she sends in Dewgong. Not only are we underleveled, but we're also at a severe type disadvantage. She takes out Golem and Rhyhorn before we're able to take down the Dewgong with Kabutops. She sends in Cloyster, and I decide to try to buff up our attack stat with Swords Dance. This was actually pretty effective, and after she missed a few clamps, we were able to take Cloyster out without a hitch. We're also able to take out Slowbro and Jinx, and end up surviving our submission recoil on just 3 HP. However, she then sends out her ace Lapras, and this thing is a monster. She misses her first Hydro Pump against Kabutops, but we actually end up missing a few submissions in a row because the universe apparently hates me. I try to confuse her with Aerodactyl Supersonic, but we miss and get hit by a nasty blizzard. Amistar survives a Hydro Pump and hits with Horn Attack, but since he isn't super offensively powerful, we don't end up doing much damage. Finally, she takes out our weak link Onix. We may have lost this time, but there's still hope. These Pokemon, Golem, Aerodactyl, Amistar, Rhyhorn, Onix, and Kabutops, have all shown what they're capable of, and this last challenge won't be a deterrent. Brock will come out on top and take his rightful place as the true Indigo Plateau champion. So many people told him that he couldn't do it, but they were all wrong. It's his time to shine now, and we're going to be the ones to help him get there. We get a final look at the team and then take this challenge again. Let's do this. Lorelei's up first, and she's a lot less scary now that we've boosted our confidence through training in the Victory Road. Dewgong is no match for our submission. We set up a Swords Dance on Cloyster, but she manages to connect with a clamp, disabling us for a few turns. It's no matter though. We're freed and clobber her clan with a boosted submission. Kabutops falls into pretty low health, so on Slowbro I opt to use Slash to try to avoid some recoil damage. I want to save the rest of my team for what I know is soon coming. 3 slashes send Slowbro flying. Kabutops then selflessly sacrifices himself to take out Jinx. Rest well for now, hero. You've earned it. I switch into Golem to take on Lapras, but even at our level advantage, she one-shots Golem with a Blizzard. Aerodactyl's up next and I decide to go for Fly. We're faster and manage to get a critical hit in before going down to Hydro Pump. I know Amistar is weak, but I send him in anyways, knowing that he has the best shot of surviving a few more attacks. We whittle away at Lapras, forcing Lorelei to expend a few Super Potions. Amistar then takes her out with a critical hit Surf, and we're free to progress. It was ice beating you, Lorelei. Bruno, Master of Fighting Types, is up next. I decide to main Aerodactyl here because every other Pokemon I have would take super effective damage. But I honestly forgot that he led with Onix, so I accidentally started with Aerodactyl. I switch into Amistar while he buffs his defense with the next item. I quickly finish him with a Surf and switch back into Aerodactyl to handle Hitmonchan. It falls to Fly and Bruno sends in Hitmonlee, who suffers the same fate. He sends in his second Onix and I switch to Amistar again and one-shot it with Surf. Finally, he sends in his ace Machamp, who I think Aerodactyl should be able to take out with a single Fly. However, I was mistaken, and Machamp actually gets a critical hit submission on us, nearly OHKOing. Thankfully, the submission recoil damage takes him out, and we're free to move on to Agatha. The battle with Agatha is a bit anticlimactic since we have very good coverage against all her Pokemon, so I'll only summarize the finishing blows. I end up only needing to use Golem in this fight. We take out the first Gengar with Earthquake. Then we take Golbat out with Rock Slide. Third is Haunter with another Earthquake, but it also manages to confuse us before we knock it out. We take some damage and become paralyzed through Glare before her Arbok falls to Earthquake. And finally, one last Earthquake for her final Gengar does the trick. Now we move on to the penultimate challenge. Lance wields the powerful Dragon type, but luckily we have a few Ice Beams up our sleeve to take him down. The only Pokemon that he has that isn't weak to Amistar's Ice Beam is Gyarados. He leads with this Gyarados, so I start with Kabutops, hoping to set up a few Swords Dances and take him out with Submission. It's a 2-hit knockout once we actually start throwing the punches, but unfortunately Kabutops falls with his foe. At this point, there's absolutely nothing Lance can do to stop us from decimating his team with Ice Beam. Every one of his remaining Pokemon fell with just a single hit. For some reason, I thought he had 2 Dragonites, so seeing that he only had 1 made me pretty happy. I didn't want to have to deal with more than what we needed to. And finally, we reached the moment of truth. This whole challenge has led to the final battle against the champion. Let's show our rival how powerful rock types can be. He starts with his Pidgeot, so I lead Golem. This Pokemon isn't too much of a concern since we have such an overwhelming type advantage, but he does surprisingly manage to survive one of my Rock Slides. Also, let me just say that in most cases, Mirror Move is pretty stupid, so I don't know why he bothers keeping it on Pidgeot. Up next is Alakazam. And remembering back to the Silph Company battle, I'm not feeling super excited for this one. He's faster, so he gets a Side Beam off, leaving us with only 39 HP. Thankfully, since Alakazam is a bit of a glass cannon, one Earthquake is enough to send it to an early grave. Rhydon and Arcanine are both pretty uneventful matchups, since Omastar is able to easily destroy both of them with some Surfs. I switch into Aerodactyl to handle Exeggutor, and 2 fly attacks later, he's down too. All that remains is the bulky Blastoise. I switch into Golem to do a heap of damage with Explosion. Luckily, he missed his Blizzard, or the rest of this battle would have been a real nightmare. Unfortunately, we didn't do quite enough damage to take him down, so Kabutops had to come in and finish the job with a quick slash. And there you have it! Brock is now officially the Pokemon Champion of the Kanto region. Good job, Brock! I want to take a moment at the end here to thank you, yes you, for watching this video. I've been working on this project for a really long time now, and it's the first time I've ever done anything with video editing or producing. I would really appreciate it if you could leave some feedback about what you liked and didn't like, since I'm still trying to get my footing with some of this stuff. If you have any suggestions for ways I can improve my videos, please drop them in the comments. I honestly feel like some of the parts in this video were a bit awkward, especially towards the beginning, but I definitely learned a lot over the course of this video alone. I'll be applying some of the better techniques that you guys suggest and implement the feedback in my next video, where I will try to beat Pokemon Heart Gold as Falkner. Anyways, that's all I have for now, so I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.